I never thought I'd get chosen for something like this. I was just an interpreter, one of the hundreds assigned to the Coalition Embassy on Varelia Prime, a crystalline world where the skies shimmered in shades of silver and violet. Humans weren't the most popular species in the galactic community. We were newcomers, brash and unpredictable. Most alien cultures tolerated us, a few admired us, and some outright despised us. The Varelians were one of the few who fell into the curious but cautious category. They were beautiful, in that otherworldly way that made you feel like you were looking at something sacred. Pale skin like polished pearl, silver eyes that glowed faintly under the light, and hair that shimmered as though woven from starlight. I had been stationed there for 4 months when she walked into my life. Liravel, daughter of High Chancellor Sailvel, heir to the Varelian dynasty. She wasn't supposed to be anywhere near the human embassy. And yet, one morning, she arrived unannounced, escorted by guards, cloaked in royal armor that gleamed like liquid chrome. When she saw me, she froze. And then she smiled. A slow, deliberate smile that made every translator in the room turn their heads. "You," she said, pointing at me. "You will speak for me." Her tone wasn't a request, it was an order. And from that moment, everything changed. Middle, the bond that shouldn't exist. For weeks, I acted as her linguistic liaison. She was overseeing a joint cultural treaty, the first step toward formal human-Varelian relations. At first, I thought she treated me like a novelty, an amusing human who dared to look her in the eye. But as the days turned into weeks, her demeanor shifted. She began asking questions. Why do you laugh even when you are sad? Why do humans give gifts that have no worth? Why do you care for those who do not share your blood? She was fascinated by the way we valued emotion over logic, by the irrational compassion that shaped everything about us. And slowly, without meaning to, I found myself falling for her curiosity, for her quiet intensity, for the way her voice softened when she said my name. One night, after a long session of negotiations, she invited me to her private chambers, a gesture that no human had ever received from Varelian royalty.
The room was breathtaking.
Crystals pulsed gently from the walls, and the floor reflected the night sky outside. She turned to me, her silver eyes unreadable. "Do you know what a bond mark is, Eli?" I shook my head. She raised her hand. In her palm was a small ring, metallic but alive, like liquid light frozen in form. "In our culture," she explained, "a bond mark is offered only once. It signifies eternal partnership, a union of spirit and mind." Her gaze didn't waver. When a Varelian offers this, it cannot be undone. I felt my pulse quicken. "And who would you give that to?" She stepped closer until I could see the faint shimmer of emotion in her eyes. "To you," she whispered. Then, without hesitation, she slipped the ring into my hand. "Accept this ring, human," she said softly, her voice trembling, "because you will be my husband." The moment the galaxy stopped. At first, I thought it was a joke, a cultural misunderstanding, maybe a test. But when the air around us began to hum with energy, I realized it was very, very real. The ring activated, thin threads of light extended from it, circling my wrist before disappearing under my skin. It didn't hurt, but it felt binding. Eternal. "Lyra, what did you just do?" I stammered. Her eyes softened. "I have chosen you. My soul has chosen you." I could barely breathe. "Lyra, humans, we don't even." She placed a hand on my chest. "Do not fear what you do not understand. The bond will not harm you." But harm was the least of my worries. When the news broke, the heir to the Varelian throne had bonded with a human. The entire planet erupted. Protests flooded the capital. Holoscreens showed my face next to words like defiler and impurity. Varelian officials demanded the bond be severed, but it couldn't be undone. Their ancient magic or whatever advanced biotech they used was permanent. Lyra refused to yield. I chose him, she declared before the council, and I will not betray that choice. The chancellor, her father, was livid. You have doomed us to shame, he thundered. Lyra stood tall, her voice unshaken. Then let our shame be love. The war that followed. Things escalated quickly. Other species saw this as weakness. Treaties wavered. Factions within the Varelian Empire called for Lyra's abdication. I begged her to renounce the bond to save her people, but she refused. They will learn what it means to choose, Eli. To love without permission. Then came the attack. An extremist group, the Pure Veil Order, stormed the palace. They wanted her dead before her corruption spread. We were separated in the chaos. I fought my way through the corridors, armed with nothing but a plasma baton, until I found her in the throne room, surrounded by enemies. Without thinking, I threw myself in front of her, blocking the strike aimed at her heart. The energy blade sliced across my shoulder, searing pain flooding through me. Lyra screamed, an inhuman sound that shook the very air. The crystals around the chamber flared to life, responding to her rage. A wave of telekinetic force erupted outward, flinging attackers against the walls. When it was over, she collapsed beside me, her eyes shimmering with tears. Why? She whispered. Why would you risk yourself for me? I smiled weakly. Because that's what love does. The aftermath. The coup failed, but the cost was high. Dozens were dead. The palace was half in ruins. When I woke days later, I was in a Varelian medical ward. My wound had been healed by their biotech, but I could feel the bond pulsing faintly under my skin, alive. Lyra was by my side. Her armor was gone, replaced by a simple white robe. The council is divided, she said quietly. Half demand my exile. The other half see our union as a symbol of peace. I sighed. And what do you see it as? She looked at me with a sad smile. A choice I do not regret. She reached for my hand. They can strip my title, my name, even my power. But they cannot take you from me. The exile. A week later, the council ruled. Lyra was stripped of her succession rights and exiled from the capital. I was given a choice, return to Earth or go with her. It wasn't even a question. We left together in a small vessel, bound for the outer colonies, uncharted worlds where the Varelian laws didn't reach. As we drifted through the endless black of space, she turned to me. Do humans have ceremonies for unions? I chuckled softly.
Yeah.
We call them weddings. She tilted her head, curious. Describe it. I told her about vows, about promises, about rings that symbolized eternity, not through power or technology, but through faith and love. She smiled faintly and reached for my hand. Then this ring, she said, touching the glowing band on my wrist, is both yours and mine. The years that followed. We built a home on a small moon orbiting a gas giant. There were no kingdoms there, no politics, no wars. Just us. I taught her to laugh without restraint. She taught me to listen to the stars. Sometimes, I'd wake in the middle of the night to find her watching me, her silver eyes filled with quiet wonder. You humans, she'd whisper. You live so briefly, and yet you burn so brightly. And every time, I'd reach for her hand and say, then let's burn together. The ending, love that transcends time. Years passed. The Varelian Empire changed. The old chancellor died, and his successor reopened relations with humanity. One day, a Varelian emissary arrived at our moon. The council wishes for your return, The emissary said to Lyra. Your union has inspired peace. The people call you the bridge between worlds. She looked at me, uncertain. I smiled. Go, Lyra. Show them what love looks like. But she shook her head. Not without you. So we went together. When we stepped into the council hall, thousands of Varelians bowed. The same people who once called me defiler now whispered my name with reverence. Lyra turned to me, her hand in mine, and said softly, When I gave you that ring, I thought I was binding you to me. But now I see it was I who was bound. I smiled. Bound to what? She leaned close, her voice trembling. To something greater than power. To love. And as the stars shimmered beyond the glass dome, I realized something beautiful. She wasn't just an alien girl who gave me a ring. She was my universe.